The United States government took a 10% position in the stock ownership of the Intel Corporation, one of the giant companies in California, with a written agreement that they can buy another 5%. Well, if you own 15% of the shares of a company like that, you are a de facto decision maker. You are among what we call the major shareholders, who are the owners of these businesses, who can have a disproportionate effect on who is on the board of directors and what they do. Well, this is extraordinary. To save the company, it was said, for national security, it was said, the government and the top echelon of this corporation become the same thing. Well, let's see. That means if workers strike that company, they're striking the government. Will the government send in soldiers, which sometimes happens? Will it be then a strike against the government? Will the union be unable to function? Will the government throw the union out the way they are doing now with the government employees at the federal level, where they are directly removing the union? I mean, we're talking about really big changes in the internal structure of American capitalism. There was an agreement made with NVIDIA and AMD the government gets a 15% cut of the revenue from their being allowed to sell chip-making machinery, I believe, and chips to China. Now the government is a partner in those two corporations. Now, if you remember what German fascism was, or Italian fascism, the merger of the top echelon of German companies with the Nazi Party, or Mussolini's fascists, you should stop and take a deep breath here. What is emerging in America is a capitalism that has two foundations. The big collections of capital, Vanguard, BlackRock, Blackstone, known over all the world because they've begun to be the capitalists of the world, and the high tech, which is the only remaining dynamic part of the American capitalist system. The big financiers and the high tech. And Mr. Trump is positioning himself as their spokesperson, their leader. And would they sacrifice much of the rest of American capitalism? The answer is yes. And why would I say that? Because they've been doing it. They have made the money from the last 30, 40 years of globalized neoliberalism. They are the victors. They have the global market. They have the global capital coming into their hands, and they have bought large portions of it. The left wing in Berlin struggles for a rent control system and discovers that the largest landlord in Berlin is the American, I forget whether it was Blackstone or BlackRock, but one of them is the major landlord they have to contest with. Wow. This is an extraordinary reorganization of American capitalism to be the agency, if you like the old notion, the Central Committee of the capitalists. That Central Committee, the U.S. government, recognizes the financiers and the high tech, and the rest of it, they do not care. They will profit from the total global picture. And they want deals with the Chinese. They don't want war. And that's a contradiction also, because Mr. Trump wants them to think that his global dominance is their best way forward. And they are not sure of that at all. Many of them don't want that, don't like it, and argue and push against it. That's being fought out here and will be as powerful a shaper of what now happens, as will be the contradiction between China and the BRICS on the one hand and US G7 on the other hand.
This new tech economy you're describing, it's something that has been experimented with in the past. Although if you have this relationship between the public, the government, and the market forces or the oligarchy, historically you see that the liberals in the early 19th century would look to the free market as something to constrain the power of the state, to make sure it doesn't get too powerful. The end of the 19th century, the capital interest gets too powerful, rise of oligarchs. Many liberals then look towards the state as a partner to limit the power of the capital owners. The problem is when you have capital and government going hand in hand, especially if they begin to then whip up an ideology that individuals who should subordinate themselves to the nation, or with excessive militarism and or other ideologies, the individual's in a very weak spot. So when you see the president filling up the first row with these tech billionaires and making essentially aligning their interest with state interest, going hand in hand, it's this used to be a good description of a fascist political economy. Where does it go from here, though? Because this is again, it's not just in the international sphere you see this economic decline of the West, but even within our societies, capitalism isn't working as it was supposed to, and a lot of the values and ideals which our governments used to lean on for legitimacy, they're all falling apart, which means that there must be a different source of legitimacy. This is it's hard to see how this is going to play out well, though.
I don't think it's going to play out well. I think what you have here in the United States you don't have fascism yet, but you have the assembling of the conditions and the parts. Will they come together in a fascism? Could they? Absolutely. Will they? I don't know. I think it's a little too early to say. But look, there's no lack of suggestion of where it can go. The same president who is enormously increasing the defense budget and enormously increasing ICE as an internal army has already shown he's willing to send that army into the cities. Into Portland, Oregon in his first presidency, now into Los Angeles in his second, and with threats now for New York and Chicago. Okay, what are you sending them in there for? To clean up crime. Nobody, I really mean this, nobody in a serious position had anything like this to say. Most of our crime statistics show a falling off of crime in recent years. Not that that's all that important, but the reality is he had to make this up. He had to go to the rural areas, which think in rural areas in this country there's a fear of the city. Many rural people do not go to the city, and when you ask them why do you never go to the nearby city? I will get shot, or they will steal my wallet. But these are fantasies. I live in New York City. Nobody stole my wallet. Nobody has ever shot at me, etc., etc. You're seeing the president have to hype to kill the 11 people in the boat 1,000 miles away, and then to talk about the drug trade. What? The drugs are everywhere. The drugs I can get anywhere in New York City or any other American city. That's a big problem. So he'll talk about that, but he'll talk about crime. He'll make things up in order to provide an excuse to use the military. Now that he's becoming a share owner in a company, will he use it for that? The headlines in the United States today were ICE went to a factory in Georgia that makes automobile batteries overnight and arrested hundreds of workers because they are the assertion they're undocumented immigrants. Well, it turns out a little research shows that there have been some industrial accidents at that factory, and the undocumented immigrants took the chance of reporting them. And so the management didn't like this. And you can now be sure no undocumented immigrant who works there will report anything, because they're all being deported. And who knows who will be replaced. We are seeing signs of all of this. Will the American people support it? Not clear yet. We don't have the AfD in Germany, or Le Pen in France, or Farage in Germany, or Meloni in Italy. We don't have that yet. But we have the same splits. We have an emerging left, which is strong in the United States, not very well organized, but strong in the United States. That's why we're about to elect a socialist Muslim to be mayor of New York City, the largest city in the country. And looks like he's going to win, and can only be defeated if the following event occurs: that the mayor of New York currently, who has been charged with all kinds of corruption, whose entire government is in jail now or pending trials for corruption, who's been pardoned from some of his corruption earlier by the Department of Justice choosing not to prosecute him despite the evidence being huge. It was announced this morning that he may be made the new ambassador to Saudi Arabia from the United States in order to get him to stop looking for a re-election, because his votes might go to the other opponent of the Muslim socialist, who otherwise is going to become the mayor. That's an act of desperation. It's politically grotesque, obviously so. The report, by the way, of this appears in this morning's New York Times, which is the most prestigious newspaper for such a story to appear in the whole country. So you're seeing the decision to do this, and the decision of those represented by the New York Times to expose it right away as an effort to stop it. Now you see the struggles that are going on here that are very momentous. I would argue that all of this is a complicated internal network of contradictions and struggles to cope with the decline of the U.S. empire and the rise of what you're seeing. Look, every company that I know of here in the United States that is engaged in some way or other in international trade, buys from abroad, sells from abroad, has storage facilities abroad or production facilities, every one of them is urgently rethinking their strategy for the next 5 or 10 years, because the world has changed. They don't want to be in a country that either will have heavy tariffs, which affect their business, or it will raise them, or lower them, or delay their implementation, or get rid of them. The uncertainty is, and that they don't think will go away. They know that Mr. Trump is in there for 3 more years. They know that the support for Mr. Trump is big enough that even if he leaves the scene, whoever comes next, I'm not saying they will all make decisions in the same way. They won't. But nothing other than reassessing is going on. If you want evidence that the meeting in Beijing and Shanghai and so on was important, That's it. It's every country, every corporation is trying, what do we do? What is our strategy if these tariffs persist, if they leave, and above all, with the uncertainty that has now been loosed on the world? They may blame Mr. Trump, and no doubt they will. But that's a footnote, by the way. Every leader in the world, whatever the economic problems they have, Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, they're all blaming it on Mr. Trump. And there's enough of a grain of truth that their problems are worsened by the tariff, the sanction, the whatever. Mr. Trump has mobilized the most global hostility to the United States as a nation that could be imagined. And we are only at the very beginning of how that plays out. And every company is wondering about that and trying to figure out. Of course they're suspending. They'll tell Mr. Trump, we're going to invest $800 billion, like the EU. Von der Leyen, we will invest. That's costless. Means absolutely nothing. The truth, we have no idea what the role of the United States will be in our future investments, because it's impossible for us to make a rational decision. So we'll shut you up by giving you something you can tell your people. Then we'll see what 2, 4, 6 years from now look like. And then we'll tell you where we're going to go. And we're going to hold that over your head, because if you do things we don't want, we will revisit the commitment and blame you for undoing it. Everybody here knows that. And it's the fading of the U.S. empire is the thrusting, bitterly they don't like it, into the hands of the capitalists, a context that is the last thing on earth they want to be confronted with.
Well, as you said, all this all this uncertainty, which is what the market, the businesses, states want to avoid. Everyone's searching for predictability. So that's why I think this thing which is happening now in China, the attempt to build a new foundation, that this attracts a lot of attention for countries and companies who are looking for now alternatives that could provide stability. But just for me, the main shock has been that not only are countries like South Korea, Japan now questioning the alliance system with the United States, as they should look towards diversifying and reconsidering what kind of economic system they're marrying into. But as all of this is happening, when the most important thing the US can do is to promote more trust, we saw this tariffs against India, the attempt to humiliate India. Just it doesn't make any sense to me. This is even if you want to have more obedience and loyalty, this way of doing it is humiliating them in public, essentially asking them to sit down on the chair next to the Europeans, more or less, in front of Trump's desk. This kind of, it's very difficult it's difficult for me to understand why it was done in this way. It just seems like an exercise of self-harm. I'm not sure if you have any final thoughts on this before we wrap up.
Yeah, before we wrap up, let me try to explain out of the United States why that contradiction that you summarize well exists. Mr. Trump also, like every corporation and country, is trying to figure out how to play the decline of the American empire. And as I tried to say at the beginning, he's caught in the contradiction. On the one hand, he has to make accommodations to slow it down. That's what he's trying. And so he will. He'll meet with Putin. He'll do things that may surprise you. On the other, he must be the standard bearer for the denial, because the mass of people voted for him, the people who got him into office, are the ones who have been hurt over the last 40 years. They're mostly white, male manufacturing workers and their families and their communities. They really got hurt. They lost their jobs. They lost their income. They lost their security, and their families and their communities were badly damaged, still are, by that process, which still goes on. All right? They want a reversal of the 40 years of history. They literally want America to go backward. Make America great again says what they want. They want a powerful leader who is strong enough to compel the world to go backwards 40 years. He cannot survive, even in the office that he was elected to. He cannot survive if those people lose confidence. He has to be the big, tough leader. They want the United States of the 1970s and 80s, where they were the global hegemon. Or if you like, the 1990s, the unipolar moment that Professor Mearsheimer tells us about, etc. He has to play that role. So when he comes to India, he wants to accommodate something. Could he get Putin to bend a bit more if India stopped buying the oil? He doesn't want to smash Putin. He wants to work a deal. But he knows he has to squeeze Putin to get it. So he wants that. But he can't be seen asking, because that violates the he doesn't need it. He's punishing Mr. Modi for not. So he reverts to and that works here at home. He's a tough guy. You know, Putin is the bad guy, of the way he's played in this country. Mr. Trump, despite everything he tried, could not get a revaluation of Putin. And that's symbolic too. He's willing to work with him. He meets with him, brings him to the United States. Symbolically significant. But he then has to cope with his own contradiction by being the tough guy who punishes Mr. Modi, because Americans, thinking of Asians as the inferior people, which most of them more or less have in their minds, are very troubled by anything that looks like begging or asking or being in a penitent position. You have to punish them. Look, Mr. Biden was better. The few years of difference. He referred to Xi Jinping in public as a thug, a common criminal is what that, in American English, is what it means. What in the world are you doing? He had to be that persona. Otherwise, his handlers would tell him, you just lost 20% of the vote that you need to stay in office. Everybody here, Trump included, is caught up in the contradictions of a declining empire.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they're gonna get out of this one. It does feel like an end game here. There's no good solutions anymore. But
well, I want to thank people like you who have and who organize honest confrontations. It's not a question of whether I'm right or wrong about this or that point, and that's true for all your guests. But what's really I want to recognize in you is the value of having these kinds of conversations, trying to take a step back from this totality to be able to say something important about it, rather than simply taking sides and repeating what's in the media.